Welcome to our CART webinar week 3. I'm going to pull up my agenda here for you so you can see. I'm just going to share my my slides here first. Ta-da! And I'm just going to get right to it because, as always, we have a lot to cover. And I wanted to start by just going over a brief agenda, what we're going to cover today. I'll just do a very, very brief recap of the past 2 sessions. Then we're going to spend some time going through 2 articles on our simple rating methodology. And then we're going to go through 1 article with our full rating methodology, and then we'll leave some time at the end for Q&A. But this session is going to be a little bit more interactive, so I will ask you for feedback during when we're going through the 2 articles on the simple rating methodology and the 1 article on the full rating methodology. So last week and the week before, the first one was really an overview of our CART system and platform, and the second one last week was an introduction to rating reliability. We also went through some materials on what you get with the CART platform and how to use it, some lesson plan ideas and things like that. And if you didn't have a chance to see those, you can see them on our site. And that I'll show you exactly where that is. So on this website, adfontesmedia.com, if you go to For Educators, go to More Educator Materials, that's this page right here. And then at the very bottom, we've got a Teaching News Literacy Webinar 1 and Teaching News Literacy Webinar 2. All right, it's easy to find them. And then if you still can't find it, go ahead and email us. We'll be happy to email you a link. Okay, so I want to jump into, I want to step back this week and go through our simple rating methodology. We didn't spend much time doing that last time. Let me just make sure I've got my grids and all that stuff set here. Okay. I wanted to take a step back and go, whoa, I'm getting some feedback. Hello? Okay, sounds good. Zoom technical difficulties always, right? So I wanted to go back through our simple rating methodology. I realized that that last week, hold on, sorry. Make sure I'm sharing the right thing here. Last week, I realized I might have gone a little bit too fast. I tend to talk fast and put a lot of content in these webinars and overestimate what we can cover in 45 minutes or 50 minutes. So if you felt it was too fast last week, I apologize for that. And I want to make sure that we cover our simple rating methodology because this kind of analysis of the news, this content analysis, rhetorical analysis, doing a deep dive into each individual article, it can really take a long time to develop expertise in something like this. And that's what we do at Adfontes. It's what I love, so I can get really excited about it and talk about it at a lot of length. I have a lot of webinars for this reason. But I want to show you that it's possible, even in a short time, to develop proficiency. And sorry, I'm playing whack-a-mole and muting people. You can effectively develop proficiency. We don't have time, especially you all as educators don't have time to have everybody be an expert in everything, but it's really important that students are proficient in certain things. And one of those important things is news literacy. So proficiency just takes practice in this scenario with a decent number of different kinds of articles. In my experience, I say 3-4 dozen articles, just my experience with analysts and with people using it with their students. It's a lot of articles, 36, 48 articles, but it's not so many that it's insurmountable. And students really can develop proficiency by going through that many articles over time. And that can be accomplished in a few weeks, a few months, depending on how you structure it. So what I'm going to do is go through 2 examples one left and one right about a polarizing topic using our simple methodology. And if you recall, our simple methodology looks like this. Whoops, log in here. Okay. So this is your CART platform. Hopefully everybody can see this CART platform with a analyst home. This top menu is what analysts see, and this second menu is what you as a coordinator, meaning a teacher, what you see and how you're able to add articles and things like that. So we're going to rate one of these articles. Our simple, it's going to show this screen here. Our simple methodology just has students rating reliability on one sliding scale over here and bias on one slider over here, okay? And we're not gonna look at this article right now, but before we get into that, I want to discuss the topic just generally that we're going to address because it's a really polarizing one. We're gonna be talking about abortion. These stories are going to be about the Supreme Court's case decision on a Louisiana law restricting abortion from a couple of weeks ago, okay? And I want to preface this in the same way I have asked you in previous webinars to preface difficult topics with your students. And that is by reminding you about the humanity and the real lived experiences of the people that are on this call, the people that are in your classroom and in your lives that may have had very personal and very hard experiences with this particular subject. Okay, as you know, abortion is a very polarizing topic in this country, and a lot of that does have to do with people's real personal experiences. So, folks on this call, folks in your classroom may have had an abortion themselves. They may have not wanted to have that abortion. Maybe they had to have it. Maybe they are grateful that they were able to. Maybe they wish that they hadn't. Maybe there are folks on here who are staunchly against abortion for closely held religious beliefs. Maybe it's not even a religious belief, but maybe it's a moral belief. Maybe it's a feeling. Maybe it's just a sentiment that arises whenever they read about the topic of abortion. And those could be grounded in a lot of other experiences, like their own experience of being a parent, their experience of knowing somebody who had of knowing somebody close to them who had an abortion and they didn't want to. So these real stories of people's lives, they exist, and we're going to read about about real experiences of people because when it comes to a topic like this, most sides tend to focus on the toughest cases, the cases that are most compelling and the most sympathy endearing for their own side. Okay, so just keep that in mind. The point of this discussion is not to convince anybody one way or the other. It's just to make folks aware that people with both opinions exist, and we have to exist with each other in the same country. All right, let's dive right in. Okay, so we're gonna look at two very different left and right stories. Okay, and you're gonna get to judge based on this simple rating metric. So we're gonna actually pull up this article. First one. All right, rate this article. We're gonna start with all right. Okay, here it pops up. It's a source called Common Dreams. Let's go over to that. Hopefully you can see that. All right, we're gonna rate this article. We're not gonna read the whole thing, but we're gonna read most of it, okay? All right, so let's look at the title. As Supreme Court blocks Louisiana's anti-choice law, reproductive rights groups breathe sigh of relief and prepare for continued fight. The court's legitimacy, this is the lead. It's spelled a couple different ways, L-E-D-E and L-E-A-D. Those are both common usages. One's not necessarily more right than the other, even though I'm misspelling that. The court's legitimacy in the eyes of the public will be threatened if they follow through on Trump's promise to end legal abortion, said NARAL Pro-Choice America. And let's take a look at the graphic. In this graphic, you have two protesters, and their signs say, "Stop the war on women, NARAL Pro-Choice America." All right, so let's go through a couple of paragraphs and look at our other context clues as well. Reproductive rights groups on Monday expressed relief after the U.S. Supreme Court struck down an extreme anti-choice law in Louisiana, but said they were prepared for a continued fight to protect reproductive health care across the country. In a 5-4 decision in June Medical Services versus Russo, Chief Justice John Roberts joined the High Court's 4 liberal-leaning justices in ruling against a 2014 Louisiana law, which stated that doctors who provide abortion care in the state must have admitting privileges at a nearby hospital. The restriction was one of several targeted restrictions on abortion providers, and that's abbreviated TRAP, T-R-A-P, laws passed by states in recent years designed to shut down clinics. In 2016, the Supreme Court rejected a similar law that had passed in Texas. Writing the opinion for the 4 liberal-leaning judges, Justice Stephen Breyer ruled that like the Texas law, the restriction placed an undue burden on patients seeking abortion care in violation of the 1992 Casey versus Planned Parenthood decision. The law poses a substantial obstacle, quotes, to women seeking an abortion and offers no significant health-related benefits, Breyer wrote, agreeing with a court's ruling. As such, the Republican-led Louisiana legislature imposed an undue burden on a woman's constitutional right to choose to have an abortion, he added. Today, we can rest easy knowing abortion access is still intact in Louisiana, tweeted the National Women's Law Center, okay? And here's a photo of a tweet, and the caption in the tweet says, "Abortion access should never be restricted." Let's go, so let's read one more paragraph here. So the doctors who filed a lawsuit over the legislation argued that the restriction would leave patients in Louisiana with only one eligible provider at one clinic where they could obtain care. About 10,000 women seek abortion care each year in the state, okay? Going down to another tweet that's embedded here. It says, lost in the abortion ruling, Senator Collins said that Brett Kavanaugh would follow precedent when it came to abortion rights, but today John Roberts followed precedent, explicitly so, and Kavanaugh did not. Never forget that Susan Collins lied to you about Kavanaugh. Let's do one more line here, okay? In this moment of turmoil for our country, fighting for the fundamental rights of everybody is more important than ever, said Elise Hogue, president of NARAL Pro-Choice America. All right, so I think you guys get the gist, you folks get the gist of that. Now, I want to hear from you. Let's go rate this news source. So in our simple rating methodology, we're just focusing on overall ratings for reliability and bias. And the things that we're going to focus on in order to make those ratings are the categories. So let's start with reliability first and then go to bias. And feel free to take yourselves off mute or to pop in with your opinions on the chat. All right, so for reliability, our choices are original fact reporting, complex analysis, or mix of facts of fact reporting and analysis, below that, opinion/fair persuasion, selective or incomplete story unfair persuasion, propaganda/contains misleading info, or contains inaccurate or fabricated info, okay? We are going to look at bias next, but let's just, I'd love for folks to weigh in on what category you think this would fall under. I've got a couple of volunteers here. So we've got one vote for mix of fact and analysis. Anyone else?
Fact analysis.
Fact analysis. Okay. Sounds like we're starting to gain in consensus. We've got someone says opinion, fair persuasion. Okay, we've got selective or incomplete. Okay, so we've got a little bit of variety in our responses, which is okay. Selective, okay. All right. Oh, we got a score from David, 40, which is like right in the line between 40 is right here. So between the higher end of analysis. Okay. Okay. All right. So let's discuss why. Why would you categorize this? Throw out, you don't need to draw on what you already know about a rating methodology in terms of veracity and expression or things like that. But why would we classify this as either opinion or selective or analysis or fact reporting? Go ahead and chime in with some reasons why.
Well, in the first paragraph, it used the word extreme, and that just kind of jumped off the page for me.
Okay, good. Extreme. All right. Extreme.
And I don't know whether or not people would categorize it that way. The other thing is, and this is a question for you. I'm familiar with trap laws, and do you think people on both sides of that question would characterize things as trap laws, or would people say, no, trap laws don't really exist? This isn't a trap law. This is about maintaining the safety of women when they get medical care or something like that?
Yeah, I think trap is a. I'm not familiar with whether that is a term that's only used by the left, or if it's folks use it on the right as well. Are you familiar with that? That's actually an important thing to bring up.
Well, I am familiar with it on the left.
Okay. Anybody familiar if folks on the right use that that terminology? Okay. That's right. If not, because it sounds to me like a term that would be used. They're calling it a trap. A trap is usually has a negative connotation, right? Okay. So we've got one reason is no responses from anyone on the other side of the case. Excellent point. I think that goes a little bit more towards bias, but bias and expression do go hand in hand. They're very, very related. It's really hard to separate out just bias when you've got opinion. So the same things that would make you put it in the opinion column are the things that indicate bias as well, right? So it's the vertical and the horizontal, they intersect when you come to the opinion column. Okay, the use of extreme and precarious. Selected tweets as evidence to support analysis. Yeah, right. So selected tweets, not necessarily, they're not necessarily credible sources for commentary. Yeah, and they are commentary. All right, good. So thanks for your input. I think you can make, as you can see in the middle of the chart, you can make some arguments for why something is would tend to be more a mix of fact and analysis or an opinion, and that tends to be where there's like the greatest a difference in overall ratings, but that's okay. All right, we don't have to get an exact right answer, but we can. When we get to our full methodology, we tend to get a little bit closer because we get a little bit more granular about what we're looking for in an article like this. So as you can start to see, you're bringing up considerations of both veracity and expression, but mostly expression, okay? There's not necessarily anything in here that we've identified that's jumped out to anybody as completely untrue, right? I mean, there are statements that maybe might not be classified as like not exactly true or not exactly false, right? The things that would fall under opinion statements. Why the use of blue for some words? Ooh, these are links.
Oh, okay.
Blue are hyperlinks. And ooh, we're going to talk about hyperlinks here in a minute, okay? Especially when we talk about veracity. Good, more emotional language regarding Kavanaugh and Collins. Absolutely, the expression, it really how these how the article is expressed certainly tends to lend itself towards analysis and or opinion. Okay, the difference, the nuanced differences between analysis and opinion being analysis would be better supported by factual statements and opinion statements being less supported by factual statements. Going back to that analogy that we touched on at the end of last call, when you're trying to figure out the difference between analysis and opinion, try to think about it in terms of lawyers, okay? So are you listening to a good lawyer or a not very good lawyer? A good lawyer is succinct, persuasive, like from Hamilton, and uses, it tends not to use lots of adjectives and adverbs in describing. So when I was in law school, one of the things that my writing professors would beat out of me is to not say things like clearly and obviously. So if you have to say clearly and obviously, it's not clear and obvious. If you're able to just say the fact and then say the conclusion, and then it is clear and obvious from those things, that's more convincing. So, however, in the actual practice of law, there are plenty of lawyers who use clearly and obviously and terribly and, really loaded language in their briefs. And that's very similar, very loaded language in articles like this. All right, perfect. So I think we've got a good handle on where we'd rate this for reliability. Let's move on to bias. All right, if we're gonna choose between most extreme left, hyperpartisan left, skews left, neutral, skews right, hyperpartisan right, most extreme right. Okay. All right, if you're reporting on the decision of a Supreme Court case, there is a need to convey what the other side believes. I believe so, yes. In a least biased article, that's what you would want to report. Pardon me, I've got my Starbucks. So where do we rate this for bias? We've got a skews left. Any other thoughts? Skews left? Skews left, hyperpartisan left. Okay. Hyperpartisan left. Okay. Skew left. All right. So we're in the ballpark of here. Okay. And depending on your own personal views, you were going to see some variation in here, and that's totally fine. But no one's saying this is right, correct? This was pretty straightforward, which is good. Okay, in our system, we can kind of tell on an article by article basis. So even though there are folks on this call, some are more left, some are more right. We have different views on abortion. We're going to get in the same ballpark here. Okay, so what are some of the reasons why we're going to rate this left? If you're discussing this in your class, why would you rate this left? No dissenting opinion, right? It's pretty much all the quotes are from one side, like the folks from NARAL. Photos and tweets are all left, absolutely. Talk about pro-choice. Yes, pro-choice only. The word anti-choice is used by left. Absolutely.
When they expressed the supporting view, it was buried deeply in the story. It wasn't until about 2/3 of the way through or deeper before we actually had some offhand mention of the supporting view for the legislation.
Right. Offhand mention of the supporting view, like 2/3 down, not given very much priority at all, right? The picture and the topic of having it be pro-choice, definitely. The comment on Susan Collins, photo was of NARAL protesters.
I can go back.
All right. Critical of the conservative SCOTUS justice, absolutely. All right. So this is we're getting into some of the reasons that we touch on in our full rating methodology, which is the political position of being pro-choice, right? The pro, access to abortion, right? Against laws restricting abortion in ways that infringe on the ability of a woman to get one, right? So all those are all political positions. Then we talk about language, right? Language is the pro-choice, anti-choice. There's no mention of the word pro-life in this entire article, right? All right, and certainly, and then comparison. We haven't done any comparison to other articles about the topic, but if you think about how, if you can just imagine in your head how other news stories, news articles would have covered this, you can imagine that a less biased article would have had some dissenting views from both sides, things of that nature. Okay. All right. Let's look at the other side. Okay. So I'm gonna do our group rating here as, I'm gonna split the difference here. We're gonna call it, all right. Now, when it comes to right answers and wrong answers, there really isn't one here. Now, there's like a right-ish range, right? The range that we're in is the range that you're looking for your students to be in. Now, our standard deviation with our analysts is approximately 8 points, and that's about a category in either direction. So that's totally fine. If your students are 8 points, if they're 10 to 12, or maybe even 14 points off of the median, then they're in the right ballpark. Okay, this would only be like a wrong answer if somebody was like, no, this is a hyperpartisan right. I mean, that would just indicate that they just didn't know what the issue was. Okay, all right, or if they said this totally original fact reporting, or this is totally inaccurate and fabricated, that would just indicate a misunderstanding and like an extreme characterization of something that they hadn't really thought of. All right, let's go back and rate an article under a simple rating methodology from the other side. Okay, all right, we're back here. So this is under our simple rating methodology. Our more complex one is under this batch, but we're going to stay with simple for right now. Okay, let's go to, all right, this is from Life News. This is a different view, lifenews.com. Their beat is anti-abortion. Like, this is like kind of what the whole site is about, okay? So Joe Biden celebrates abortion, calls killing babies in abortions a constitutional right. And there's a picture of Joe Biden looking sadly out the window. All right. Joe Biden does not support protections for women, and he certainly does not support protections for unborn babies. On Monday, he celebrated a U.S. Supreme Court decision striking down a Louisiana law, abortion law, that would have protected women from shoddy abortion practices. I want to point out one thing here, and these are the hyperlinks. We're going to talk about this in another article too, but whenever I hover over an article, notice that in the very bottom left corner, you can of the screen, you can see the hyperlink to where it's linking to. So this is it's linking to another lifenews.com article. So the reference, oops, hold on. The reference here is to its own source. If you look at this one down here, same thing. Their other references are also to other articles in lifenews.com. All right, back to the text. Today's decision reaffirmed that states can't put in place laws that unduly burden a woman's right to make her own healthcare decisions. But the fight isn't over, Biden wrote. As president, I'll codify Roe v. Wade and protect a woman's constitutional right to choose. Biden claimed the law was extreme, but it actually had strong bipartisan support. Its lead author is a pro-life Democrat woman, State Senator Katrina Jackson. Passed in 2014, the law required abortionists to have hospital admitting privileges to treat patients with potentially life-threatening complications. Though the state provided evidence of women being abandoned while suffering from abortion complications and abortion facilities failing to meet basic health and safety standards, the High Court struck down the law Monday in June Medical Services versus Russo. The majority ruled that the law was an undue burden on women's access to abortion. Okay, I'm going to go down here to a section where they focus on Gorsuch's dissent. Okay, so it says, unlike most Americans, Biden also supports taxpayer-funded abortions. This is another link to Life News. If he would succeed in this goal, tens of thousands more unborn babies could be slaughtered in abortions every year in America. So moving down to the dissent of Justice Gorsuch. In his dissent, Justice Gorsuch said Louisiana lawmakers had good reasons to pass the admitting privileges law. They said they heard testimonies from women and emergency room physicians about abortion practitioners' record of abandoning their patients. One woman told lawmakers that the abortionist kicked her out while she was hemorrhaging, saying, "You're on your own, get out." Later at a hospital, an emergency room doctor found body parts from her aborted baby still inside her womb, according to the ruling. Another woman who complained of severe pain after her abortion said she was told to go home. But when she went to the emergency room, she said they found a tear in her uterus and a large hematoma containing a fetal head. Okay. All right. So this is getting, this is getting pretty, graphic, certainly heavy topic. Want to acknowledge that. But let's take a look at some other things here on this page. The ads here, overturn Roe v. Wade, sign your name, defund Planned Parenthood, win a pro-life t-shirt. So that, all things to take into consideration. So let's go back to, I want to point, first let's do the rating, okay? Where would we rate this in terms of reliability? Our choices again are original fact reporting and fact reporting up at the top, complex analysis or mix of fact reporting and analysis, opinion, fair persuasion, selective or incomplete story, unfair persuasion, propaganda, contains misleading information, contains inaccurate and fabricated. Okay. Opinion to selective incomplete, incomplete, okay. So, or kind of hovering in this area so far. Hyperlinks shown so far seem to point to Life News only as far as I could see. One would hope for external references, selective incomplete, okay, selective. All right. Okay, now let's talk about why. Why selective or incomplete or propaganda? Words such as slaughter, okay. Persuasion, can't decide whether unfair or not, okay. Emotional language, hyperlinks need to be external sources. Propaganda focuses on Biden's take instead of the issue. Loaded language, okay. Only negative implications mentioned. Horror stories about problem abortions, okay. All right, yeah. So so one of the things that when folks want to look at reliability of, oh, did you set me up for this, Larry? I like to see actual external references to horror stories. Okay, so sometimes when things come across as shocking, we have a tendency to discount it. Like, did that really happen? Is that really a thing? And when I read that, I was like, are they referring to something that Gorsuch actually said in his opinion? Was there a testimony in this case? And turns out we can find out these things, right? Not from this article itself. The hyperlinks aren't gonna help us with that. But let's go and Google stuff, because that's what we do. We Google stuff when we don't know. So June Medical Services versus Russo. Let's look this up. Let's look up the case text. Okay, you know what's helpful is there are a couple of things that I clicked on. One was well, I like to go straight to the text. This is the Supreme Court decision. This law.cornell.edu has a lot of free statutes and Supreme Court decisions and things like that. Okay, so let's see. We've got the opinion, concurrence. There are some other, you could go and look for news articles, but I wanted to find this part of the abortion horror stories that Gorsuch was referencing. Okay, let's look at this. Let's go down to the Gorsuch dissent. Okay, so just scanning. All right, so test. All right, I think we found it. I looked this up before. I cheated. So testifying physicians explained, for example, that abortions carry inherent risks, including uterine perforation, hemorrhage, cervical laceration, infection, retained fetal body parts, and misectopic pregnancy. Unsurprisingly, those risks are minimized when the physician providing the abortion is competent. Okay, so there are, so the actual quote here says the legislature heard too from affected women and emergency room physicians about clinic doctors' record of abandoning their patients. One woman testified while she was hemorrhaging, her abortion provider told her, "You're on your own, get out." Okay, so what the Supreme Court justices are referring to the lower court testimony, legislative history, legislative record. So those are primary sources. I mean, you could trace it all the way back to this woman who testified. Was that true? That would require quite a bit of digging. But it seems that, it's not untrue. I mean, it's certainly selective that they presented just the side of it, because in the Common Dream story that we saw before, they talked about how, oh, sorry, actually, there was another article that I read here with Justice Breyer's Justice Breyer's opinion about why, the other side of this, why they said that it was important to allow it, is because it was really hard for hospitals to get or for doctors to get admitting privileges over the course of several months. These laws are really designed to not let anybody get hospital admitting privileges. So there's all these sides of the story. Okay, so it's important to go and dig through those primary references just as an exercise for your students. I mean, the value in that is it at least shows that you need to get into the weeds and get into the discussion, that it's not just as simple as the headlines, because the whole practice of digging into this story and looking up some primary references, and then having these having these different discussions that we're having here in this chat, they're super important and way deeper than your headline of Joe Biden celebrates abortion, calls killing babies constitutional right, and as Supreme Court blocks Louisiana's anti-choice law, reproductive rights groups breathe a sigh of relief. If you only saw one of those headlines in your Facebook feed, that would really influence your thoughts on the subject, right? And if you only saw similar headlines from one point of view, that would continue to reinforce that, right? Let's just go back and rate this real quick I think we had, hold on. Okay. How did I get to go to actual written opinions? Obviously, as a lawyer, this is second nature to you. Okay, so look up the case name. Case names are always usually cited in there. Just drop in Google the this law.cornell.edu has a lot of text, and then I often just do Control F, search for like the terms that I'm looking for within a document. Okay. Okay. Let's, I do not see anything that verifies Biden celebrates killing babies. Yeah, that's pretty extreme in terms of language, right? So let's go back to rating it. All right, so it sounds like headline alone should drop it below 16. Okay, so good. So we've got, I've heard, scores in the range of, like kind of 10 to 24, okay? I think we have some 15, okay. Yeah, 15, 16. I think it's kind of right on the line here. Okay, yeah. I'll go with that as a consensus. All right, let's talk about right versus left. How biased is this? And where would you put it? Hyperpartisan right, hyper to extreme. Okay, cool. So I think hyperpartisan right sounds about right. And we touched on reasons. So shout out reasons why. Why hyperpartisan? What would make it like for political position? We usually don't rate it outside of this line unless it's like going beyond political positions taken by elected officials, okay? But if like the language, if there's something super extreme about the language or the comparison, it can fall out here in the most extreme right. Okay, I'll open the article from my article list. Oh, you can't open it from your article list. You have to open it from your analyst home. You have to be added as an analyst. So if you're having trouble with that, we can help you with that offline. Focus on graphic detail. Okay. Alrighty. So yep, it's going to be in this area. It's pretty right. It's about as right as you can get as far as bias here. Okay. Okay. Let's accept that rating. Cool. All right. Now going back to, all right, to covering this in an actual class. Oh, let me share my screen. I recommend when you're doing the simple methodology is once you've done a couple of articles like this, create a what happened document. Okay, so a what happened document would be, ask your students based on what they just read, what actually were the facts, like what happened, when, what was the law, and these would be things like, in this case, there was a law in Louisiana. What was that law for? What did the Supreme Court say? Who voted for it? Who voted against it? What did those say? So a what happened document could be thought of as the least biased way you could present this news story. And it's helpful to do that and then actually look at a less biased news story about this topic. So let's look at this happens to be from the Denver Post, but it's actually an AP article syndicated from the Denver Post. It starts out, the title is Supreme Court's Abortion Ruling Raises Stakes for Election, okay? Picture of the Supreme Court. It says supporters of abortion rights are elated, foes of abortion dismayed and angry, but they agree on one consequence of the Supreme Court's first major abortion ruling since President Donald Trump took office. Upcoming election is crucial to their cause. Third paragraph, the Supreme Court in a 5-4 decision struck down a Louisiana law seeking to require doctors who perform abortions to have admitting privileges at nearby hospitals. For both sides in the abortion debate, it was viewed as a momentous test of the court's stance following Trump's appointment of two conservative justices, Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh. So this has more facts. It has things that you look for, like quotes from proponents and opponents, and it would look a lot more like your what happened document if you were to create something like that. I also suggest that you create a left, center, right table of terminology and political positions, especially if your students are unfamiliar. I saw in the chat there was some discussion of folks that might, are high school students familiar with the left-right positions on these things. And as you go along, there's lots to discuss on what kind of terminology is used left and right here when it comes to abortion. Same thing with political positions. And you could even keep a running list of this in class over the weeks and months and really develop a body of knowledge for your class over the semester or the year. Okay. All right. So let's go back to rating and reliability, and we'll dive into the full rating methodology here with another article. So remember, our definition of reliability is what news can you most rely on. So reliability measures how much you can rely upon an article or source, to be truthfully, factually, widely, and thoroughly informed about news that is important to you and others. So the reason we define it like this, and one way you can think about it, is think of reliability as in terms of what you would tell a person who is totally new to this country to read in order to get fully informed, right? You wouldn't go, if somebody's like brand new, or there's like an alien from another planet and they want to learn like what is going on in this country. They happen to speak English and could read it proficiently. Where would you send them? So you wouldn't just send them again to something that's super opinionated, but not technically lying. So remember, not full of outright lies is a low bar. Most stuff on the media bias chart is not just outright fake news. But if you wanted them to be like the best informed they could be, what would you have them rely on? And it's a similar question to like, what would you tell a 7th or 8th grader to rely on where they're just learning about the world, right? You want them to start with the best, most reliable sources. Now, there are sources that are fine and support your worldview, but if you really want them to be widely, truthfully, factually, thoroughly informed about things that are important, you'd point them to the stuff that we push toward the top of the chart, okay? So last week we went through an article, a couple of articles about Bubba Wallace and NASCAR and Trump's tweet, a couple of which were mostly pretty reliable under our definition. But this week, let's look at one through a thorough rating methodology about the Washington Redskins name. Okay, this is going to be this should be a little bit easier, but remember, we're talking about veracity. We have a scale of 1 to 5 for veracity. We have a scale of 1 to 5 for expression, for like how stuff is presented. And then we have, we also have in our, this is in the training materials for CART 2, considerations for rating the headline and graphic. The main considerations are relevance and fairness, especially for the graphic. And so we're gonna go ahead and rate those. Okay. Let's go back. Okay, so where I'm at my analyst home, I'm gonna switch to full rating methodology, very advanced. Okay, so we're gonna rate this article. I've got it pulled up, it's from PJ Media. It says, all right, the morning briefing, change all the names, nuke all the statues, grievance wusses will still be whining, okay? So we're gonna go through and rate on several things, expression, bless you, veracity, and headline and graphic, okay? In our methodology, we like to start with expression because you don't need to know necessarily whether something is totally true or false in order to rate it. In the system, you just have to be reasonable. You want to be reasonably certain if it's more true or less true. You don't have to be absolutely certain, especially when it comes to something like an opinion article, which doesn't necessarily need to be rated completely for veracity. So let's start with expression. We're gonna try to figure out, is this article, are these sentences and are these paragraphs more expresses facts, which would be number 1, or facts plus analysis, which would be a 2, or analysis, which would be a 3, or analysis kind of bordering on opinion, 4, or opinion, 5. And opinion in the 5 category can have kind of a wide range of like, all right, decent opinion to trash opinion, okay? Let's go to the article. Okay. So we've got, yeah, we've gotten some opinions on this. Welcome to Grievance on Steroids. No doubt I will catch some grief for this one, but it's kind of my role around here, is it not? The grievance mob is picking up steam using the year of the riot to claim more cultural victims. We'll get into the philosophical discussion about all this in a moment, but on a personal note, I find it rather exhausting just attempting to keep up with whom or whatever they are mad at during any given moment. At this point, I'm not even certain there are any statues left in America. A little hyperbole there. Okay. It's all bunk. Proudly abandoning their police forces to score points with a bunch of Marxists, then predictably seeing violent crime skyrocket overnight. We are supposed to believe this is all being done in the name of delivering some long overdue justice. Okay, so we're all pretty much in agreement that this is an opinion, and I tend to agree. Any dissenting thoughts though? All right, let's say, what would you rate the quality of this opinion? Like, a good opinion or kind of a trash opinion or like kind of in the middle? Give me a number here from like 0 to 24.
Near the bottom.
Near the bottom. Yeah, it's not a super great argument, okay? Bad lawyer. Okay. All right. Let's move on to veracity. Anything in here that's like not necessarily, you know, since it's opinion, like most things that fall into opinion are not like provable or disprovable, but there are some things. So, you know, it's again on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being, you know, definitely true, 5 being definitely false, 3 being like neither true nor false, and 4 being, you know, mostly not true. We've got a lot of 4s. Okay, I agree. I do want to do the same exercise about looking at the links, okay? So this link here is a link to townhall.com, which is another right-wing website, but at least it's not this website, okay? This one is a link to Time Magazine. Okay, that's at least not this website. So we can verify some of these hyperlinks. This hyperlink, not very discriminate, that's a link to PJ Media, okay, this same site. Here's something that when you're reading, you might take a moment and be like, oh wait, is that true? So it's only Tuesday and the grievance mongers have been busy. They pulled off the seemingly impossible, making Washington Redskins owner Dan Snyder back down after years of saying that he wouldn't change the team's name. Barely pausing to take a breath, the grievance mob then decided to go after the Texas Rangers. What? They did? Okay, so this is a link to PJ Media, but what is this deal about the Texas Rangers? So let's Google it. Texas Rangers name change. I already Googled it. I mean, I binged it, I guess. News. Okay, so opinion, the Texas Rangers team name must go. This is from the Washington Post. Why the lefty mob is gunning after the Texas Rangers town hall. Controversial columnist Karen Tia says Texas Rangers must change name, etc. from the Sun. Okay, so there are additional articles about this, and you can kind of see those results. Google News will, Bing search engine will give you this kind of stuff. So Fox News, The Hill, The Sun, these all seem to be about a Washington Post columnist saying that the Texas Rangers should change their name. So, we just wanted to see what this was all about and kind of cross-reference, because you might not know by reading this, like if it was a true assertion that going after the Texas Rangers is a real thing. Okay. All right. So good points all on this. So I love this discussion. Like, this is the kind of discussion that you want with your students, right? So for veracity, we're talking 4, right? So it's like little less than true to call things a grievance mob and like a bunch of Marxists abandoning the police force and stuff like that. So for veracity, let's put it kind of squarely in the 4. Headline and graphic, let's go back to here. So we've got, this is just a football team. So graphics kind of neither here nor there. I think we'd kind of rate that as, acceptable for a graphic. The morning briefing, change all the names, nuke all the statues, grievance voices will still be whining. Certainly hyperbole. And headlines you kind of rate as a combo of expression and veracity. So, how true, nuke is intense, wusses, yeah. So in terms of expression and veracity, where would you rate this headline? And on a scale of 1 to 4, like 1 being the best and 5 being the worst. I will 5, 4, 5. Okay, good, perfect. We're on the same page. So it's down here. So not the most reliable article. This article. So we're probably gonna call it about a 12 down here. So kind of in the propaganda. This is not necessarily misleading. We could call it misleading, but it's more like propaganda. And remember, in our definition, propaganda doesn't necessarily mean it's something that's government controlled or produced by a government. That's a very narrow definition of propaganda. Propaganda can just be like an extreme promotion of an opinion of a side. And that's one of the many definitions of propaganda. Okay, let's talk about bias. Let's talk about political position first. We want to start with political position. So the position is, should a team name such as the Redskins be changed? Now, how we rate political position is we want to compare it to, like, what are elected officials right now saying about name changes like this? Are they like, if you think about folks, hints, this is right leaning. I don't think we're going to be in too much disagreement about that. But if so, what are right leaning politicians now saying, like, what's in the ether about that regarding name changes? Are they kind of okay with it? A lot of them, or some like kind of standing for keeping old names for the sake of tradition. I mean, this kind of falls in the same category of topics of with Confederate Confederate flags, Confederate statues, things like that. Okay, all right, hyperpartisan right. Okay, so yeah, so there are some like really there are some right-leaning politicians who are like steadfast and like, no, we don't want to change any names, but there are some that are like more coming around and being okay with name changes like this, right? So this, in comparison, this article seems to be like, no, we don't want to change names at all. So it would be pretty much on the most right edge of this political position topic, right? All right, so hyperpartisan right, but I'd put it right here on this side of it for that reason. Okay, so in comparison, we haven't compared this to other articles, but this was like the most right-leaning one we could find, so it was kind of over here. And then language is pretty bad. Language is pretty extreme. There weren't any curse words in here, which would like put it over here. But grievance wusses is pretty derogatory. So, all right. Any dissenting opinions on here? It's okay if you do. If you think this is like a little bit less right or more right than that, that's totally fine. But okay, so good. Yay. We rated an article. Okay, we're coming towards the end here, but oh, and that's pretty much what I wanted to cover. Yay, I did it in an hour. So that's the full rating methodology. This is the kind of discussions that you want to go through with your students. But let's talk about questions. We've got a few up here. Okay, somebody said, what would it take for the language to be further right? The length, we typically don't put stuff like all the way to the right because things could always be worse, right? So very few things in our when we rate them, very few things tend to get the like -42 or +42 or like the 64 or the 0. Because there's always room for improvement. So, a 36, 38 is about the worst score you can get in something that's published in like civil society. But there are things that are like in uncivil society, like things that you'd find on Reddit or 4chan or, Twitter, like foul language, like racial slurs, like it would be worse language. All right, how would you respond to a student or parent who takes issue with a news literacy being taught in school and feels it is too political and partisan? How about when a student or parent disputes actual facts? So this is a common concern. Hold on, everyone. I need you to see. This is Lola. She really wanted to sit on my lap. She is my lap companion. So, this is the point of using CART. You can never keep it like 100%, sterile of politics when you're teaching news literacy. It's just impossible. So the choice is really, are you going to confront it and do it and handle it in your class, or is there risk in the backlash too great given your the area that you teach in, the parents, the environment, the support you have from your schools, and that's going to vary. So if those risks are too high, then bringing really any political topic is going to be really, really tough, okay? Because you cannot kind of only you could teach like really non-controversial, like less polarizing topics. Like you could use articles that are like fake news versus real news, or things that are more about like unimportant sensational topics that are not necessarily political versus like real news reporting. So the design of CART is that you can adjust it to how you need. I want people to bring in these political topics, like these hard polarizing topics. I mean, this is really one of the hardest ones, like this and racism and like and right now, like electoral politics, like who you're voting for. Those are going to be the most contentious issues for sure. Guns and immigration. We have a lot of polarizing issues in this country, but all of those are super contentious. The idea in pushing back against like the fact that you're indoctrinating your students or you're telling them what to believe is that this system is literally for them to tell you what they believe, for them to come up with their own reasoning, for them, your students, to take a blank slate. Like this is a blank chart. We're not looking at Advantage Media's media bias chart. We're looking at our system for rating, but they're making their own chart, right? They're deciding where the articles go. And if you focus on that with students or with parents, I think you can get some buy-in. Of course, not going to work in all situations, but we put in articles about different topics, different weeks. Some weeks are going to be less polarizing topics than others. If you need to avoid certain topics just because, I mean, if you teach a religious institution or in a part of the country where you just like don't want to deal with the backlash from a particular topic, that's fine. You can always put in your own articles as well. And there are plenty of examples out there that you can use and the students can still rate, and you can still use like the veracity and expression metrics and have students rate stuff for reliability and bias. If it's just not polarizing, there won't be so much bias in it. It'll just be more of like the reliability, which is important. Okay. All right. Yeah, must be right. Oh, somebody said we can't see Lola. Here's Lola. All right. Any other questions? I'm sorry if I miss any. If I miss any questions in here, then let me know. Not a service. Well, I mean, she's always in service of Advantage Media and is my needs for a buddy, my lap buddy. So, oh, I'm sharing my screen so you can't see Lola. I'm so sorry. Is that better?
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. She's 15 and a half years old. Sweet girl. All right. Well, thank you all. Really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you for participating and for rating some articles with me. Next week, oh, you got a cat, Ellen. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your pets. You know, this is super, it's super heartwarming to see everybody and their pets. Okay, next week we're going to talk more about bias. Yay! All right, see you all then. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Vanessa. Thank you very much.